Welcome back, I'm Askat Sharlief and you're watching news from Kazakhstan. After a week-long recess, trial over the incitement of social hatred resumed on Monday, August 27. Early last week it was postponed due to the death of attorney Alexei Plugov's mother. He is the main attorney of Alga party leader Vladimir Kozlov. Hearings continued with the expert group from the forensic examination. Experts Abisheva and Akbarova responded identically to many questions of the defense, calling the inquest too abstract or saying the area is beyond their expertise. Nevertheless, the sides finally managed to find an answer to the key question of what groups were affected by social hatred promoted by the accused. Expert Abisheva explained that it was incited between workers and state authorities. The statement shocked a prominent human rights advocate Evgeny Zhovtis, who said that the statement doesn't correspond to the fundamentals of sociology and has nothing to do with political science either, since state authorities are not a social group by definition. The human rights activist claims he can't recall another similar case in global practice, except for Russia, where courts attempted to artificially define state employees as a social group using vague characteristics. Lev Ponomarev, a human rights advocate from Russia who attends the Aktau hearings, gave his own assessment of the experts' statements as well. State authorities are not a social group and correspondingly their representatives are not representatives of a social group. One can look at what has transpired as an attempt to overthrow constitutional order or whatever, but it is impossible to consider incitement of social hatred in the context of workers against state bodies. This contradicts all political science and sociological research that I know of. Power structures are not a social group, that's for sure. Only national security officers are capable of doing these things so artfully using TV and political technologies, like they did with Khodorkovsky in Russia. They imply some revolution sentiment but fail to say a single word about violence. Next, there is some footage from Zhanaozen. Only national security officers can do this. At the same time, the topic of revolution is relevant across all post-Soviet countries, and no one is afraid of raising it. In one way or another, the age of authoritarian rulers is ending. The regimes are feeling uncomfortable, their ratings are slipping, and then all of that is mixed with the footage of violence at the square. Our political scientists are very advanced in this sense. Later in yesterday's hearing, experts Abisheva and Akbarova continued to answer questions from the defense, juggling the terms and sometimes confusing the definitions. Answering question on whether Twitter messages and leaflets content can influence minds, one of the experts said that a comprehensive evaluation confirmed that any content has apparent influence. Political scientist Rosa Akbarova added that due to disunity in the society, any words calling to overthrow or change governments as well as other negative information can actively influence people. When the defense asked to refine her testimony in relation to concepts of influencing minds and moods, the expert cited as example of leaflets where the situation in Kazakhstan is compared to neighboring Kyrgyzstan. According to her, actions of some ideologists from the opposition were of demonstrative character. Also, the expert expressed her opinion about the work of independent media such as KplusTV and Golos Respubliki, labeling reporters' actions as criticizing and instigating. The experts believe that the independent media were using persuasive, repetitive and emotionally charged techniques. Everything she said was horrible because in this way any material may be presented as political if it is studied, for example, for what and whom it motivates. This way we can find ourselves under criminal prosecution. This prompted me to recall all titles of my interviews that I ever gave, as I have a feeling that I can also be charged for the potential impact and instigating motives of my various texts. As for the media, which the political scientist believes manipulate information for the purpose of achieving political goals, chiefs of newspaper Respublika and K+ channel responded to criticism.
We don't share this opinion. I felt we were only involved with journalistic activities and distribute the information available in this region at that moment. We're now at risk of being shut down because of being labeled an improper media. We had to devote more attention to this issue, make more reports. We had to try to get through to the regional authorities and President's administration. We had to somehow force the authorities to start a constructive dialogue with the strikers. I understand that it sounds naive, but I can't help but think about many people killed and wounded, as well as those unjustifiably imprisoned and their families. They might think that we at K Plus are close associates of Mukhtar Ablazov and start every morning with an offer to sell our country to the State Department. But we, in the course of 8 months, talked about uncovered issues in Zhanaozen, pointing out that this is a very serious situation that needs real involvement of the authorities and that it must be addressed. Tamara Kaleva, the president of Adil Söz International Foundation for Protection of Freedom of Speech, is strongly against such wording. What material could be released by the publication is a matter of editorial independence, which is legislated by the law on mass media. In the same sense, the pro-governmental press, which concealed the fact of Zhanaozen massacre in December 2011, could be accused of manipulating public opinion. Tamara Kaleva considers such statements to be very convenient, as it allows them to accuse the disfavored media outlets and persecute them down the road. If, according to them, K+, Stan KZ, and Respublika are manipulating public opinions, then what about Khabar and Kazakhstanskaya Pravda, which failed to cover the news on the oil workers' strike for 7 months? Did they not manipulate public opinion by concealing this fact and let it turn into such a critical situation? In this case, let's blame all media.
Journalist Lukpan Ahmedyarov shares that opinion. He is currently in Germany with the well-known stage director Bulat Atabayev.
I wouldn't be surprised if the authorities frame a criminal case and start prosecuting the media. It is not a secret that we at Reporters Without Borders declared Nazarbayev the enemy of the press, and therefore it is quite logical that the president's administration may come up with some savage ideas.
Kazakhstan's stage director Bulat Atabayev himself plans to meet with Bundestag deputies. He was offered to address the parliament in late September with a report on the political situation in Kazakhstan.
Guten Morgen, wie schön, good morning. Ich freue mich. Freue mich sehr, freue mich sehr.
The idea of inviting Bulat Atabayev to speak in front of the German parliament was proposed by the member of the left party Lucrezia Jochimsen, who in the past also worked as the stage director and journalist. The MP informed German officials about the arrest of Atabayev and was among the people who addressed Kazakhstan's MPs with the appeal to release the activist. Now Frau Jochimsen plans to visit Kazakhstan as part of the culture cooperation project with non-governmental organizations. She said she wants me to deliver a speech to the Bundestag MPs, since the topic of Central Asia and Kazakhstan is quite new for Germany. Apparently, the interest in Kazakhstan rose after my arrest, and now many people want to know about the country and the story behind my arrest. I believe that terrible things are happening in Kazakhstan. I've heard that many political leaders, journalists and just creative people often end up behind bars in Kazakhstan. Bulat Atabayev, despite recent events, still managed to attend the Goethe Medal Award ceremony, of which I'm very pleased. Let's see what will happen next. We will continue to support him as much as we can.
Economist Mukhtar Tayjan believes villagers should be paid special attention. During the course of his 40-day trip across Kazakhstan, he encountered bad roads, lack of drinking water and no cell phone connection. However, there were also positive impressions. People outside big cities are still kind-hearted and the natural landscape is more beautiful than abroad. Tayjan also said the main objective of his trip was to observe Kazakhstan citizens' living standards and study conditions in the villages.
Our goal was to see the state in which the country is in now, take pictures and get a better insight into the situation, as well as to see the social and economic state and how people live their lives. We really wanted to visit sacred places as well. That was our dream for a long time. Mukhtar Tayjan is planning to produce an analytical report based on his trip to the regions. It will cover the main aspects of rural life. Currently, everyone can see the photo report on The Economist's personal page on Facebook. Tayjan said his example should be followed by all officials and MPs. Taking trips to the regions raises patriotism and helps understand the needs of voters. I think political parties should focus on the villages where most people live. That should be the primary objective for them. Villages are in need of basic things like tap water, cellular network coverage, landline communication, or sustainable electricity.
Trial over Olzhas Sabirlinov began in Astana. The entrepreneur, a former budding wrestler, hacked to death a Eurasian University student, Zhandos Zharimbekov, in April of 2008. Sabirlinov was wanted internationally for more than 3 years. He was finally detained last October in Tatarstan, Russia.
It all happened in the yard of Nursai, one of the most prestigious residential complexes in Almaty, also known among the people as the House of MPs. The verbal exchange between two men occurred literally for no reason. They couldn't agree on whose vehicle goes first on the narrow road. However, upon driving away for some distance, Sabirlinov suddenly returned and hit the offender with an axe. There were dozens of witnesses to the incident, including the businessman's own 8-year-old daughter, who was remaining inside the car throughout the ordeal. Later, she was even summoned to court as a witness to confirm that her father allegedly fell into a state of temporary insanity after Zhandos Zharimbekov threatened to rape her. However, the child didn't attend the trial on Monday, and the courtroom was mostly filled with representatives of the victim. The family of the deceased student asked for the most severe punishment for the killer. He didn't think twice to take the life of my child, and what about his own? He's been on the run for 4 years, and he's still trying to justify himself. He didn't even ask me for forgiveness. In fact, I will not forgive him, just as any other mother of a murdered child.
Bodyguard Dennis Ray's relatives are tired of waiting for examination results, which has been stalling for weeks in Germany. They're thinking of filing a lawsuit against law enforcement officials for failing to provide information about the ongoing investigation. Tatiana Ray, the bodyguard's mother, whose remains are still unidentified in 3 months, was on the phone with the studio.
It will be 3 months now. Is it conceivable? Which nerves would stand that, crying every day, reading all those materials? The committee of soldiers' mothers insist, claiming that I'm not losing anything. They are keeping silent for 3 months. How is that possible? I think we still have to collect all the necessary documents, otherwise it is just unbearable.
22-year-old citizen of the Russian Federation tripped on an explosive device in Shymkent. The incident took place in the private sector of Chepaevka village. At around midday, the young woman went to the store. Not having gone a few meters, an explosion rocked underneath her. The victim was urgently admitted to emergency care.
The patient was brought to hospital in a very poor condition with multi-fragment fracture of the right foot bone, as well as bruises and with extensive laceration injuries. She was immediately taken to the surgery room, where we conducted primary treatment and fixed the leg with the Elizarov apparatus. We were able to save the leg and removed only a small portion of the torn and damaged tissue. Russian citizen and former resident of Shymkent Margarita Sidorenko came to visit her husband in Kazakhstan a week ago. The woman is now grateful that her 3-year-old daughter, who was with her at the time of the explosion, was not harmed. I was tossed aside by the blast and fragments flew towards me. You can see the result. It may leave me crippled for the rest of my life. I don't know what is going to happen with me now.
Kazakhstan citizen Ilya Pyanzin's extradition to Russia, one of the suspects in an attempt to assassinate President Vladimir Putin, was conducted with numerous violations, say human rights activists. The suspect's attorney, Dmitry Todorov, alleges neither prosecutors nor the court brought forth sufficient motives for the extradition of their former defendant. Meanwhile, defense arguments were essentially ignored.
There have been many violations regarding the extradition procedures. My main argument was that he was a Kazakh citizen, and for that reason, he could not have been extradited to Russia. Furthermore, Pyanzin's lawyer noted that the motives of the ostensible assassination attempt were never disclosed. Ilya did not say anything as to what made him participate in the crime. On February 4th this year, the alleged criminals, including Pyanzin, were working on a makeshift explosive in a rented apartment in Odessa when the device went off during the process, claiming the life of one of the criminals, a 26-year-old Ruslan Madaev. Pyanzin was taken to intensive care with severe burns, where he confessed to plotting a terrorist attack. However, the only Kazakhstan citizen was extradited, with Asmaev's lawyers timely applying to the European Court, which issued a veto on his extradition. It is yet unknown who will be defending the interests of the Kazakhstan citizen in in Russia, now facing 20 years in prison. Russian TV program Vremya reported that FSB investigators will soon begin working on Pyanzin's case. It was also mentioned that Pyanzin tries to deny all testimonies made earlier in the Ukraine. Ilya Pyanzin is a native of Uralsk, and his family is set to get in touch with him shortly. It is hoped they will shed more light on the situation.
So far, the consular agency of Kazakhstan in Ukraine has not received any information regarding the violations of Kazakhstan citizen Ilya Pyanzin's rights.
The Union of Muslims of Kazakhstan asks the country's terrorists to openly declare their objectives. The union offers extremists to explain to the media reasons behind various attacks across the country. Murat Alibekov is certain that terrorists' silence means only one thing. The government itself is manipulating the population's consciousness and instilling fear. Officials also do not believe in the existence of such organizations. Presidential advisor Yermuhamed Yurtizbayev believes there are no such groups, while terrorist acts are the work of separate criminals.
The Union of Muslims of Kazakhstan calls to the followers of radical religious groups to make their demands public. During the recent special operations in Almaty, security forces didn't leave any of the suspects alive. At the same time, the head of the union, Murat Alibekov, believes the extremists have something to tell the authorities, who might use the silence of people they refer to as terrorists after their death. They immediately come up with an imaginary threat to the president. It's quite a common card to play. The fears of the presidents are created artificially, and it obviously allows them to manipulate him and gain certain advantage.
Прекрасно понимаю, что можно с помощью этого страха манипулировать этой фигурой и извлекать собственные выгоды.
On Sunday afternoon, the president's advisor Yermuhamed Yurtizbayev said on national TV that local bombers are far from classical terrorists in terms of lacking ideology and only employing straight-up crime techniques. Those operating in Kazakhstan are not groups of religious fanatics. Apparently, they're loners with no agenda, he concluded. Yurtizbayev approves of the total elimination tactics during special operations, saying that 9 terrorists killed on August 17 in Baganashil village of Almaty region had criminal records and were drug addicts. What else did they deserve, asks the official. He, however, failed to mention the rest of the casualties, as the media continues questioning the death of a child found after a house explosion. The investigation is currently underway and all the names will be announced in time. Let's make it clear again. They were criminals and gangsters, and their liquidation is justified. A leader of one of the recently terminated gangs that had 9 members visited Turkey, where he met with representatives of a radical religious sect. This is the latest data which was established by the National Security Committee. Over the weekend, the Minister of Interior, Muhammad Kasimov, reported the 12th body found at the scene of the Ilal Town National Park massacre. The total of 6 people were killed in the house of the park huntsman Zakharopoulos and just as many in the house of the second huntsman. The crime took place on August 14th in the Almaty region. Near the site of the tragedy, the investigators found an SUV belonging to Zakharopoulos' son, who hasn't yet been located. Detectives even had to resort to satellite images during the investigation. One of the satellites just happened to pass over the area at the time. We've acquired those shots which show active movement of vehicles near the huntsman's house, with one car always remaining stationary. One region, time frame and numerous casualties is what the 2 high-profile cases have in common so far. Still, security officials do not link these incidents together. According to the chief of police, currently they have several leads, with 3 versions for the Ilal Park case. Namely, the murders were committed either by personal enemies of the huntsman, poachers or intruders. The security forces officials aren't ready to declare the involvement of religious extremists just yet. In fact, none of them has committed on the lapse made by the president's advisor, who said that one of those killed in Baganashil had connections with a radical organization in Turkey.
Respublika News webpage published the opinion of readers regarding the notorious disappearance and possible arrest of the ex-governor of Atarau region, Bergey Rıskaliyev. The publication refers to the letter and doesn't exclude a possibility that the dismissal of the state official is connected to the December events of last year in Zhanaozen. In particular, the commentators of the webpage write that people who provoked the oil workers at the square assaulted the policemen, looted buildings and put them on fire. The Respublika also recalls the appeal of MPs and state officials of Atarau in support of Rıskaliyev, which according to some data emerged on the internet upon the order of a patron of the ex-governor, head of president's administration, Aslan Musin.
Most likely, the issue indeed concerns the involvement of Musin and Rizkaliyev in the destabilization of the situation in Zhanaozen and probably the organization of fake terrorist attacks. Apparently, this information was quite an unpleasant revelation to President Nazarbayev.
After the notorious dismissal of Sergei Rizkaliyev from the position of Atyrau region governor, some successful businessmen ended up in disfavor. Several firms were subjected to searches. This information emerged on the webpage of Uralskaya Nedelya newspaper. According to the publication, the investigation in relation to businessmen was initiated recently by investigators who arrived in Atyrau. Moreover, as reported by the web source, the region is expecting the visit of the General Prosecutor Askhad Daulbayev.
Searches were initiated in the offices of the largest contractors of Atyrau construction companies, Snap Oil and US 99. The office of Asia Market is now closed. According to some information, the leadership of the company left for vacation before the situation is not clarified, while other sources say that the office was already sealed by investigators. In total, the investigation team is probing at least 28 commercial firms, with people involved in the circle of interests of the ex-governor already subjected to questioning.
The symbol of Kazakhstan, the Golden Warrior, was in the center of the scandal between Russian and Kazakh filmmakers. A group of Kazakh scriptwriters accused the well-known Russian filmmaker Timur Bekmambetov, quote, in cynical and impudent money-making, using the holy symbol of independence for each Kazakh resident.
Recently, it was reported that Bekmambetov is producing the remake of a popular Soviet heist comedy of Gentlemen of Fortune, in which escaped convicts steal the Golden Warrior from St. Petersburg Museum. The screenwriters consider the idea as sacrilege. However, according to Zaik Sizdikova and Mohamed Mamarbekov, the biggest complaint is that the famous filmmaker has failed the expectations of people and the president of Kazakhstan. Bekmambetov was slated to make a film about the Golden Warrior, but the project was stuck in development for 3 years. While the financing continued and the scripts by the aforementioned writers were used elsewhere, the screenwriters went ahead and sent a letter to the newspaper Izvestia, addressing it to the Union of Cinematographers and condemning Bekmambetov. It appears he's taken the national symbol, the Golden Warrior, and makes it a part of the comedy. We do not know what it can lead to, but as a patriot of my country, I declare this unethical. Who knows, tomorrow we might see the Russian version of Borat. The single condition that we demand is drop the Golden Man plotline. He may use other Russian artifacts such as Golden Cap or Scepter in the plot, but he can't use the Golden Warrior. So far, only filmmakers' representatives reacted to the message. In a press release, they noted that their lawyers will run due diligence on the article in Russian. According to them, the symbol of Kazakhstan is used in the comedy only at the permission of Kazakhstan. Most importantly, they signed the contract on the Golden Warrior movie with Kazakh Film, which has not expressed any complaints on the matter. Additionally, there is still no final script on hand, which would satisfy everyone behind the project. Regarding the open letter to the Russian Filmmakers Union, I can say that together with my colleagues, I have no idea who these people are. We have no ties, especially legal ones, with them whatsoever. The work on the Golden Warrior is currently underway, and we are drafting several scripts. As you know, it takes years to produce a good film. We have not received any claims from Kazakh Film. If you have any questions regarding this issue, you can appeal directly to the film studio for explanations.
The scandal over the apartment granted to the bronze medalist of London Olympics, Guzel Manyurova, was finally resolved. Authorities admitted that the housing was temporarily occupied by state officials. Guzel accepted the gift even though the impression was still spoiled. More details in the next report.
The keys to this apartment were presented by the Almaty authorities to Guzel Manyurova, the bronze winner of the London Olympics. Still not believing her luck, the sportswoman rushed to her new housing, only to find out that it was already occupied. At first, the city authorities tried to explain that the people Guzel saw were not tenants, but in fact construction workers. The apartment has been in the administration's reserve fund for the last 4 years. City office employees were living there temporarily all this time, but now they have moved out. As you can see, the apartment is undergoing renovations. The new owners will be able to move in shortly. I didn't understand what happened yesterday and was even insulted, but now everything is all right. Guzel Manyurova liked the renovated housing and forgot all about the incident. Vladimir, Guzel's personal coach and husband, now points out that the apartment is located too far from the training facility. He's hinting that it would be good if the city administration took care of transportation for the athlete. We're happy to receive the apartment, however, we were annoyed by how it all started. Everywhere the awards are given in such a celebratory manner. The city administration will hopefully understand what situation we found ourselves in. Our training site is too far from the house. Indeed, the story with the award is not pretty, states sports writer Ruslan Medelbek. He believes the reason for the confusion is the officials' negligence. If you remember, 4 years ago, after the previous Olympics, there were similar problems with housing for Almaty residents Bakıt Sarsimbayev and Aset Mambetov. It should be noted that Güzel Manyurova moved to Kazakhstan from Russia last year together with her family. In 2004, as a member of the Russian team, she became a silver champion of the Athens Olympics. Of all sportsmen from Almaty, Manyurova is the only one who won a medal in London.
Serhii Sapiev is willing to take part in World Boxing Championship, which will be held in Astana in 2013. According to the London gold medalist, he's currently thinking of whether to quit and thinks of future possibilities. The boxer shared his thoughts during the meeting at the Customs Control Agency.
The officials of the state customs invited Sapiev to show him respect and at the same time introduce him to athletes. The head of the state customs department, Majid Yesinbayev, presented the Olympic champion with a souvenir on behalf of the agency. The staff members of the committee asked the champion a lot of questions, but he remained collected and humble throughout, receiving 3 standing ovations in the process. The audience was especially interested what the boxer felt at the moment of triumph. Yesinbayev also asked whether the national hero was met with appropriate honor while passing local customs on his way back from London. The athlete told the audience he loved his wife and wanted to become a 3-time world champion, revealing his long-term plans of eventually becoming a coach. I think it is really hard to start from scratch and coach an 11-year-old boy and become his mentor for the rest of his life. I don't think I'm ready for that just yet.
This is all we have time for now. Thank you for watching. Stay well.